Welcome to this session of Python Work Solutions. The aim of these tutorials is to actually work through some of the questions that we've set in class and to show you some programming skills as we go along the way that reinforce what we've already learnt and hopefully drop in a few other little extra tricks as we go to help your understanding if you're struggling. So what I've done is picked out two questions from the previous lesson and we'll just quickly go through those. So this is working with a random number. So the question is, roll a dice, random number between 1 and 6, and show the user the number and tell them if the number is odd or even. So we're going to roll a dice from 1 to 6. So if it comes up as a 3, then we want to be able to tell the user if it's odd or even. And there's several ways we can go about doing that. But I'm going to do it my way. You may have a slightly different way of doing it. As long as you achieve the results at this point in time, that is okay. So let's get underway. So one of the first things we need to do is actually import the random module. So this is a set of code that's been written for us that we bring into our project. The idea of a Python file is to keep it as small as possible. So therefore what I call overheads, like the random function, if you're not going to use it, then we don't want it in our program. It's just to keep the overhead small, to keep the program as small as possible so it can run on portable devices and things like that. So we're going to import the random. So the first thing we need to do is actually roll a dice. So we need a random number. So I'm just going to call it dice. And that's going to be equal to a random number. Now to generate a random number, we have to use the random function and we want the randint. So this is going to produce a random integer for us. Then what we do is we give it a start, like 1. So we want to start at 1 and then we put the stop in, like 6. So this should generate a random number between 1 and 6. Now to check that it's working, we're just going to print out dice. That way we know what number we're getting. So when I run the program, right mouse click and go run work solution 1, you can see it's 6. I run it again, 3, 2, 4, 5, 2, etc. So we can see it's working. I'm going to keep that printing at the moment just to make sure that I can see what the result is. So I'm now generating the random number. So roll a dice, random number between 1 and 6. Okay, I'm doing that. And show the user the number and tell them if the number is odd or even. Okay, so what I want to do now is I need to show the user number. I've already got 6 coming up, so that's that bit done as well. But we need to tell them if the number is odd or even. So what we need to do is use an if statement. So we're going to go, well, if the random number, which is dice, because that's where we've stored it, so that random number is in this variable here. If dice, and we're going to use what's called modulus, which is percent. This is a special IT sort of thing where you go, well, if the dice divided by 2, okay, does not results at 0. So if the number divided by 2 is equal to 0, which means when we use modulus, this percent sign, if there's no remainder. So 6 divided by 2 is 3 with no remainder, and therefore this would be true. And then we could actually go print, you have a even number. So let's just check this program now. You can see we've got an error at the moment because when we're doing a comparison statement, it has to be equal equals. So is the remainder 0? So if this is true, then print you have an even number. So let's run the program now. We got a 1, we got nothing. 1 again. We're winning with 1s at the moment. A 3, still odd. 6, you have an even number. So 6 divided by 2, there is no remainder, so it shows you have an even number. So therefore, if it's not an even number, we can then use the else statement, and we can go print, you have an odd number. So we'll just run the program again. 2, you have an even number. Run it again. 5, you have an odd number. So we could actually change this a little bit to go, we'll print out the dice plus quote is an even number, and we can use the same one again in the next one. Is an odd number, so that should show the dice, and because that's a string and this is an integer at the moment, we need to str it, so turn the dice into a string, so we can put a string with a string. So this is giving us a nice little complex output. So when the program runs now, it goes 5 is an odd number, 2 is an even number. And then I can just rem out this little comment statement here, and our program is complete. All right, so we've learnt the if then else statement in here. We've also looked at modulus. Remember, it turns the remainder. So not the integer part, which is the whole number part. It actually does the real part, which is the right-hand side of the decimal point. And it's saying, well, if the decimal point is equal to 0, which an even number 4 divided by 2 is 2 with no remainder, so that'll be true. But 3 divided by 2 will give you 1.5, blah, blah, blah. And that, therefore, it's not 0, therefore it gives you the else part. All right, let's go to the next one. This task goes, simulate the flipping of 2 coins and tell the user if the results are heads, tails, or odds, where you have an odd and an even coin. All right, so we're going to flip 2 coins. So we're going to have coin 1, and I'll just go _1, and coin _2. Now they're both going to be a dice flip, so we need a random number, so we've got to import random. So once we've imported random, we can go coin 1's equal to random dot random int, and we want to start at 1 and finish at 2. So it's going to give us 2 options, a 1 and a 2, 1 and a 2. And then we're going to do the exact same thing, so I'm just going to copy and paste that for coin 2. Now I want to output coin 1 and coin 2, so I'm just going to go print quote. I'll just put out the coin. So what I'm going to do is go coin 1, and then I want coin 2. But to get them in a nice concatenated statement, I'm going to str. You'll see in a second why I'm doing all this. So coin 1 plus quote space and put a dash between them, plus str coin 2. This way, turn coin 1 into a string, put a dash in between them, and also show coin 2. So let's run our program now. We should see 1, 2, 2, 1 type combinations. So we run this, we've got a 1, 1. So that would have been like, if we make 1's head, that would have been heads and heads. Okay, a 2 and a 1, so that would be an odds, and a 2 and a 2, that'll be tails. So that works out really well. We know what we're getting now. So now what we want to do is tell the user, we've got to tell them if it's heads, tails, or odds. So we can't show them 1s and 2s and get them to make an assumption. So we need to convert the 1s and 2s into heads and tails. So let's do that. Let's go print, we'll use an if statement. If coin 1 equals a 1. So we're saying that'll be a head. We can actually go print quote bracket quote coin 1 is a head. Okay, so if coin 1 is that, we're going to print that. Now if coin 1 is not that, we can go else. We can go coin 1 is a tail. So if coin 1's not a 1 and it's a 2, then it will do the other part, which is coin 1 is a tail. So we'll do the same thing for coin 2. So if coin 2 is a 1, then it's a head, and we'll change these to 2s as well, and a 2. So we should see coin 1's result and coin 2's. So let's run it now. There we go. It's a 1. Coin 1 is a head because it was a 1. So this is coin 1 a 1. Yes, therefore it does this part. Then it jumps over and goes, if coin 2 is equal to 1, well, coin 2 is a 2, so it does the false part, which is the else, so it puts out that. So now we've got them being as a head or a tail, but they also want to know when they're odds or evens. So if they've got heads or tails, we've resolved the face of the coins. So let's now look at if they've got heads or tails. So to do that, we need to see if the coins are the same. Because if they're both 1s, they're going to be heads. If they're both 2s, they're going to be a tail. And if they're different, then they're going to be odds. So if we go if coin 1 equals coin 2, then we can actually say print they are the same, and we'll come back and work on this one in a second. But if they're not the same, we can go else else we can go print you have flipped an odds. So let's see what happens here. Let's run it. Coin 1 and coin 2, they are the same. Well, coin 1 is a 2 and coin 2 is a 2. Therefore, they're both tails, which means they are the same. Okay, let's run it again. A 2 and a 1, we have a tail and a head. So therefore, we have flipped an odds. So everything's working now, except for we need to resolve this little part in here to say, well, are they heads or tails? Well, because we now know they're both the same, we can then go, well, if coin 1 equals a 1, we can then print you have flipped a heads. So if coin 1 is a 1, then we flip the heads, because coin 1 and coin 2 are both the same. Therefore, we just look at one of them and say, oh, you flipped the heads if it was a 1. But if it's not that, else, so if coin 1 isn't that, then we've flipped not heads, we've flipped tails for both the coins. And then I can remove this little line here. So what we now have is what's called a nested if then else statement. We have an if to say if the coins are the same, then if the coin is 1, we do this. But if they're the same and it's not a 1, then it must be that. But if they're not the same, then it must be odds. So let's have a look at our program now. You can see a 2 and 2, coin 1 is a tail, coin 2 is a tail, you flip tails. Run it again. Coin 1 is a head, coin 2 is a head, you flip heads. Run it again. Coin 1 is a head, coin 2 is a tail, you flipped odds. So that's how we can go about solving that program. So subscribe to my channel and keep up to date with the latest uploads, and also have a look around my channel for other useful Python tutorials.